So today we celebrate not only our KDE 4 release, technical innovation, technical excellence, but we're also celebrating the next generation of the Unix desktop. We're celebrating new stuff, but we're celebrating, most of all, contributors, people. The people together make up the KDE community. So that's what we're here for. Let's party.
11 years ago, an international team of technologists, artists, translators, documenters, and communicators started to assemble. Today we form the heart of a global community that is thousands strong. We have worked together across all divides, human and technical, to create software for all manners of people, devices, and systems. And in that time, we've accomplished what few thought was possible. We've created a coherent and innovative user experience erected entirely in the open using a process based on participation. Some of us that participate are entrepreneurs, others are researchers or professionals in our respective fields. But we're all technology enthusiasts, and together we make KDE. And to celebrate the launch of 4.0, I'd like to share with you what it means to be KDE. It all starts with freedom. So, as you know, KDE is a free software project, as in freedom software. And our core values suggest that we should all be free to do various things, and we express that in our software. In particular, we believe that you should be free to own your own data, you should be able to choose your vendors, and you should be able to explore, create, and learn without artificial external restrictions upon that. I hear someone clapping. At the same time, it's not all serious as well. You think that everyone should be free to have fun while they're using technology. They should be able to get the work they need to get done. And most importantly, we should all be able to connect with others just like us through technology. So when we started KDE 4, designing it and thinking, what are we going to do with it, there were three primary principles that we kept returning to over and over and over again in our discussions and our conversation. There's my, you can barely see it. First one was beauty. We wanted to make a system that was pretty and beautiful at all levels. We wanted to make something that people would be proud to show their friends, that they would congregate around when it booted up on a laptop screen. We wanted something that would stand next to our proprietary competitors' offerings of recent years, and people would go, oh, I want that one. I want the KDE one. That's a pretty high bar, but we set it for ourselves, and we said we wanted something just drop dead gorgeous. We also wanted to make something that was accessible to everyone. Now, that means people speaking different languages should be in their own language. Obviously, for years, we've delivered a highly internationalized and localized system. KDE 3.5, for instance, is available in over 60 languages. So with 4.0, we're continuing that tradition. But we also wanted to extend our reach to people with physical disabilities. So we've put accessibility as a prime goal in KDE 4.0, and we achieved that. But we also wanted to allow people that traditionally didn't get to use our software, we wanted to give them access to our software as well. I'm going to talk about that near the end, actually. We've got some pretty exciting stuff there. And finally, of course, we wanted something that was highly functional. We wanted something that had lots of features, allowed people to do things in new ways, and accomplish, well, their work and have fun while they're doing it. So we kept coming back to these three principles of form, function, and availability. While we were designing things, we found that we kept thinking about these three things as well: parity, performance, and promise. Now, what I mean by parity is people have come to expect a certain level of functionality from their computers. They expect to be able to go online and view YouTube. They expect to be able to share their calendars with their friends. They expect to be able to play videos and audio. They expect to be able to have a solitaire game. There are expectations that people have from computing. It's part of our culture now, having personal computers around for a few decades. So we realized we had to at least meet those expectations. And that was really the departure of KDE 4, was we sat back, we realized that with KDE 3, we had largely met those expectations. You could share your calendars, you could go online and do your web apps, you could play games, you could do content creation. So for 4, we realized we had to add to that level of parity, and we had to do new things. We had to do things you could do now, but offer them to you in better ways, in new ways. And that was really our focus on the performance. But we weren't just looking at 4.0. In fact, at the end of my presentation, the last half hour or so of the presentation, we're actually going to look at the roadmap for KDE 4. Because 4.0 is just the beginning. All right? We've arrived at the starting line, so to speak. And KDE 4 is going to have releases that go on for years. So we couldn't just think about 4.0. We had to think about, what is this desktop going to be in 10 years? That can be difficult to do when it comes to technology. Because technology, of course, tends to be fairly unpredictable. But as technology creators, we have no choice but to actually think about these things. So when we were designing our software for KDE 4, we had to think about, what are we going to do in the future? What promise can we hold out for ourselves and for our users in the way we design our software? So as we take a look at KDE 4, we're going to see these principles time and again. These principles based on freedom. And we're going to see the parity, the performance, and the promise of KDE 4. Now, KDE itself, and for the non-technical in the audience, I'm sure there's a few of you, don't get too scared. This is the only block diagram I have. So, how does KDE get put together? Right? We talked about the community right at the beginning. We're an international team, but the technology, how does that get put together? Well, KDE itself layers on top of the operating system. Whoops. Layers on top of the operating system. We use a lot of system frameworks. An example of that is dbus. In KDE 4, we adopted the dbus interprocess communication protocol. It's something that, as a user, you'll never see probably, but it's what allows our applications to work together and talk to each other in the background. We try to avoid recreating wheels that already exist. If something exists and it works well, we try and use that. So we rely very heavily on a lot of the frameworks that come with the operating system. One of the keys that starts to set KDE apart from every other desktop operating system available is Qt. The Qt library is put out by a company called Trolltech, and that is one of our fundamental libraries that we build upon to create the KDE experience. Qt itself straddles kind of halfway in between the frameworks and the KDE platform. And we'll actually see where some of that bridging happens as we go through the platform. Now, we're not going to talk too much about the frameworks, the operating system, or even Qt itself. This afternoon, we have one of the chief executives from Trolltech that will be here to talk about that. So I'll let him do that. He'll do a better job than I could. What we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the KDE platform itself. These are the tools and the technologies that we give application developers so they can make really great software. Our applications themselves, and of course this is what the user cares about, right? It's like, okay, frameworks, libraries, yeah, get to the good stuff. Well, we divide our applications into three pieces. Workspace, and the workspace is what you would come to expect from a desktop. The Windows Explorer shell, the Mac OS X Finder. We have an equivalent, of course, for that called the workspace that we deliver on Unix and Linux platforms. But in addition to that, we have core applications. And we're going to be taking a look at some of those core applications. And these are applications that we provide alongside of our development platform whenever we do a release. And next to our core applications, we have suites of applications. We have an application suite for education. We have a suite of desktop games and amusements. We have an office productivity suite, K-Office. We have a personal information management suite. Many of you will be familiar with Contact, our groupware solution. So we're going to take a look at the KDE platform and then each of these three groups of software. When we started to look at what we wanted to do to the guts of our technologies, our libraries, our frameworks, we started to notice that there are these supporting frameworks that were starting to emerge. And we thought, well, they're supporting frameworks. They're kind of like pillars, aren't they? And so in the community, we started to refer to them as the pillars of KDE 4. And these are the supports that hold up the entire system. Obviously, we have the core libraries. And these really are retouch-ups of what we've been delivering for the last 7 years in KDE 2 and KDE 3. These are things such as our component system, K-Parts. our configuration system, kconfig. These all originated in either 2.0 or 3.0, and what we've done in 4.0 is we've taken them really to the next level. So for instance, our configuration system now supports multiple backends, so that we can do things such as allow configuration to be drawn from, say, directory services. But in addition to the core libraries that we've known for years, we've brought a lot more to the table. We talked about beauty in one of the earlier slides. Oxygen was a project that was started a few years ago. We had a meeting in Berlin, Germany called the Appeal Project Meeting, where we kind of got together and decided, we tried to come up with some ideas of what we wanted to do. And we invited artists, usability experts, developers, and even business management people. So we had a really interesting cross-section. And this is quite new for us. I don't think a lot of free software projects take that holistic approach to developing software. And it really paid off because the artists could see what we were doing, and they embodied our principles and our means of working and made it their own. And they formed a project called Oxygen. Why Oxygen? Well, it was kind of a joke at the time. We said we wanted to bring a breath of fresh air to the desktop. So they called it Oxygen. Oxygen started out as a new set of icons. Pretty simple sounding, until you realize that our desktop ships with well over 1,000 icons. This is not a small art project. Essentially, they're painting on a canvas this big, making thousands of pictures. We looked at what we did in previous releases, KDE 2, KDE 1, KDE 3, and we thought we could do this a lot better. So the artists teamed up with the usability experts that were there at this meeting and in subsequent months and discussed how we're actually going to approach delivering the artwork. So in KDE 4 applications, if you look closely, you'll notice that there's some really interesting little touches. Back in the Elizabethan era, paintings were often framed in these gaudy, huge frames. The frames themselves were hand-tooled, full of gold gilt. They were pieces of artwork in and of themselves. Beautiful frames, don't get me wrong. Problem with it is you couldn't really pay attention to the painting because the frame overpowered the content. After that period, there was a movement towards extremely simple frames. Frames that looked nice, that complemented the picture, but stayed out of the way. So with KDE 4, we decided we should do the same thing. So the icons that we use in our toolbars, in our menus, they use a desaturated color palette. They're simplified. They're stay out of the way. They frame the content of the application, give you access to the features you need without actually interfering with the content. The content itself, however, again through the Oxygen project, has been made more vibrant than ever. We'll be looking at some of the applications in the demos in a minute, and you'll probably see a lot of the nice icons in the file manager, for instance, that really stand out and breathe. But once we had nice icons, we started thinking about that, everything else started to look not so good in comparison. So they said, well, where can we go from here? Well, how about we redesign how the windows look? How about we redesign how the widgets look? Why don't we do a cursor theme? Yeah, that'd be good. How about we do sounds? Yeah, that'd be good too. So we re-imaged the entire desktop from widgets to icons to our sounds, and it all comes in this form of Oxygen. So some of the really nice touches that you'll see, you may notice, is the title bar, for instance, and the content of the window blend nicely together. There's a nice subtle gradient that holds it together. If you run a non-KDE 4 application, like an older KDE 3 application or, say, Firefox or whatnot, you'll actually start to notice a difference. These little hints that you may not notice immediately, but when you compare it to what we used to deliver, it's really apparent. But of course, beauty, they say, is only skin deep, and that's true. You have to provide a lot more substance than just beauty. And that's where these next set of frameworks come in. One of the things that we identified was it's kind of silly that computers with all this horsepower and all this ability to plug in devices and whatnot, I can plug in my USB camera, I can go on a Wi-Fi network, and I can go to the next room and go into another Wi-Fi network. I mean, this was space-age stuff, right, 20 years ago. It's common today, and yet our software has really not been updated to take advantage of these things. So how many people here have gone offline only to have their instant messenger pop up every 5 minutes saying, I can't connect to the online service? Why? Why does it know about these things? Well, it turns out that especially doing cross-platform, hardware detection is non-trivial. And someone doing an instant messaging application may not actually be an expert in how to talk to the operating system kernel or HAL if you're on Linux. And if you don't run a BSD and a Solaris box and a Windows box and Mac, you don't know what they provide. You have no way of testing. So we wrapped up a framework called Solid. It's about hardware. It gives us easy access to hardware events. So when I plug a device in, an application get an event. You can query how many CPU cores do we have, how much memory do I have, what does my system configuration look like? Am I on the network? Let me know when new networks become available. What's my power management situation? Now the beautiful thing about this is we provide a simple, clear, concise, and coherent API so that any application developer, even if you're not an expert with hardware, can provide these kind of features. And we're starting to see these features pop up in KDE 4 applications, and it creates a better user experience. But even more importantly, as the operating system evolves underneath us, as you all know, Linux never changes. As the operating system underneath us changes over time, or even if we take our applications to new platforms, we don't have to rewrite this code. Because Solid takes care of all the abstraction away from the application developer's mind and puts it right within this framework. So you just say, let me know when I'm on the network. And it will work regardless of what operating system you're on and if you are compiling this program 5 years from now. Another sore spot we noticed was multimedia. Multimedia in the free software world has been sketchy. And it's not because we don't have good multimedia support. We've actually licked that one a few years ago. We've got a number of really good systems, whether it's Zine or the MPlayer or GStreamer or whatnot. But we weren't seeing it in applications. And for the same reason as a hardware issue. It's too hard. The people writing the multimedia frameworks kind of expected us all to be multimedia experts. So if I was writing a note-taking utility and I wanted to record a little bit of audio or let the user record a little bit of audio along with their notes, I had to become a multimedia expert. So we didn't see a lot of multimedia. And now doing cross-platform multimedia was even more difficult. A lot of applications we delivered in the past would work, multimedia applications would work on only certain platforms. And we decided that was no longer acceptable. Phonon came in to fill that gap. Phonon does for multimedia what Solid does for hardware. It gives developers a future-proof, cross-platform, clear and consistent way to add multimedia features very quickly to your application. How quickly? In around 5 lines of code, you can have an entire video player with seek and volume controls in your application. This is going to bring multimedia to the free software world. Now remember Solid. With Solid, we can ask, do I have a webcam? Where is it? Give it to me. With Phonon, we'll be able to capture video. In 4.0, it does playback only. The capture was pulled out. We wanted to redesign it. It's coming in 4.1. KDE 4.1, that is. But these frameworks are going to bring together new ways, new opportunities for developers. So we can actually say, where's your webcam? Let me capture it. Let me output it to this mic and whatnot. Things that were black magic in the past in free software. VoIP and presence for instant messaging is an increasingly large part of people's day-to-day use of their computers. So, again, we decided we need to fill that hole too. And we created Decibel. Decibel, which is still in development but had a release just recently, is a KDE 4 framework that builds upon the freedesktop.org work being done with Tapioca. And it provides the same kind of API that Solid and Phonon do, but for instant messaging and for presence. So we'll start to see, I think, a lot more pervasive use of messaging with Decibel. CannotE. I just love that graph because it looks so impressive. CannotE. What is CannotE? Well, this is going to sound a little bit repetitive because you're going to hear this message over and over and over again. We decided that people should be able to access their calendaring and their mail and their contacts a lot easier than they could now. They should also be able to, with the performance side of it, They should be able to store as much mail and as many contacts as they want. They should be able to get them on LDAP or local stores. And the application shouldn't have to worry about it. It should just simply say, give me a contact. And all the applications should be able to work together, so you wouldn't have to worry about synchronization issues. So the very smart people in our PIM group, the Personal Information Management group, took a step back, did a very brave thing, and said, let's not start with the GUI. Let's start with the storage and retrieval system. And that's what CannotE is. CannotE is a unified, non-graphical access framework for all data related to contacts, calendaring, and mail. This is going to allow us, and already has allowed us actually, to expose this information in places we never could before. We're going to see the Plasma desktop in a bit, and one of the things that the CannotE people did was, in just a few hundred lines of code, we're able to bridge CannotE to the desktop so you could start seeing your contacts and your mail scroll past in real time as it happened. And this is in sync, of course, with your full groupware application. Cross. Many of us feel that one of the great untapped reservoirs of talent out there are users who are advanced enough to be able to write in scripting languages, say ECMAScript or JavaScript, Ruby, Python. We've made it very difficult for them to do this in many of our applications. Amarok, which is our premier multimedia application, they provide the ability for people to add new functionality using Ruby scripts written in Ruby. And an amazing thing happened. All of a sudden, this little piece of software could do all kinds of things, like fetch lyrics, get information from Wikipedia, do crazy playlist manipulation. And we looked at that and went, that's a really good idea. Now, the K-Office people working on our Office documents wanted to provide scripting support, of course, perhaps not Visual Basic, we wanted something a little bit better. And of course, the discussion came up of which language. And for those of you who know a few programming geeks, you may know that that's a flame war starter right there. Yeah, the people, the Pythonistas and the Rubyists, and and then people like me saying, no, we need to keep it simple. Let's go with ECMAScript. Cross allows us to very simply add scripting support to any Qt4-based application. And what's really cool about it is you can write these scripts in the language of your choice. We don't make this decision for you. You're free to choose which scripting language you want to standardize on. So if you're a company and internally you use Python for a lot of your stuff, I understand there's a company near here that does that. Maybe you want to use Python to be able to automate and control your desktop. Maybe you want to use Python in your Office documents, and Cross allows us to do that. As an application developer, Cross makes it absolutely trivial. Again, 5 or 6 lines of code, and you can actually export objects from your application into the runtime of the script and allow the user to manipulate it. Sonnet is a word checker, spell checker, and eventually it'll hopefully have grammar checking as well. They're working on that. And what's really neat about Sonnet is it has the ability to auto-detect the language. And it's multi-language from the beginning. This may not mean so much to those of us in North America where we converse pretty much daily in English and only English, but for those of us who do business internationally or live outside of North America, it's very common to have one document in German, another document in English, a third one in French, or sometimes all 3 languages in the same document. Spell checking can be a real pain in these situations. Well, Sonnet allows us to say, in this paragraph, I want it spell checked in German. This paragraph, I want it spell checked in Hebrew, whatnot. And it does this without any configuration on the user's part. This is what happens when you give people the ability, the freedom to tinker and toy and try new things. This is what happens when you're an international project and they're not, some afterthought market over there in Africa or Asia or whatnot. They are our prime audience. And you get this level of internationalization that you just don't see elsewhere. DXS. Some of you may have known this as GHNS. We love our acronyms. Get hot new stuff. It's a way to get updates over the internet with just point and click. One of the things that we looked at was how difficult we make it as technologists for end users to use this beautiful thing called the internet. Because the internet, you can get all kinds of stuff on the internet, right? But it's interesting. Ask someone to change their wallpaper. Go get a new wallpaper. So they fire up their web browser and they go to, digitalwallpapers.com or whatnot. They download one that's sitting there on their desktop, and they, okay, how do I do it? Maybe I'll drag it to my desktop. And we make them go through all these steps. Well, DXS is the next version of Get Hot New Stuff. It's a web service that allows us to put directly into our applications the ability to grab new data over the internet. Oops. There we are. So this is K-stars. And I've got a whole bunch of data in here. And I actually just downloaded it while I was setting up. I just installed the operating system a few days ago on here. I didn't have all the astronomical data. Well, through DXS and Get Hot New Stuff, I was able to grab all of this information that is available for free for personal use, but we can't redistribute it, right? So we give the user the ability to actually grab all sorts of astronomical data. And it's simply a click to install. I've installed them all, so now it says uninstall. I could click again and I uninstall it. This removes from the user the need to know where to go, how to download the data, where to put it on disk, and then how to get their applications to use it. We've taken this technology to freedesktop.org as well. This is not a KDE technology per se. We're using it, but it's something that any of the free software world, or the proprietary world for that matter, could use. And this, we have both the server component as well as the desktop component. This is one of my favorite topics. Social semantics. What the heck is that? And why is it called Nepomuk? I don't know. It's a goddess of culture. Knowledge. There we go. Now I know. See, this is what participation is all about. This is an European Union funded project. It's one of our research projects. We have a few of them going on in KDE. And the goal with this is to take desktop search and make it actually useful for everyone. Desktop search is a great idea, right? It kind of brings Google to your desktop, right? It allows you to go through and search your files. The shortcoming of these technologies is twofold. Number one, you have a search app. And it turns out users don't want a search application. They want all their applications to be able to search. So we need to be able to put this technology in all of our programs. Second of all, people wanted the information organized in a way that we think. Now, the computer may think it's really cool to be able to find the word giraffe in all 500 documents. And it's happy with that. I can find that word all over the place. As human beings, though, we'd like to say, I want the giraffe picture that was sent to me by email by John Terpstra here. He sends me giraffes all the time. I don't know what that's about, but okay. Being able to tie contact information, the provenance of the information, or where it came from, together with the metadata is what Nepomuk is all about. And then we put this in all of our applications. Now, Nepomuk is a brand new technology. It's a research technology. You're not going to find this anywhere else. We're really taking the technologies that were tried and tested on the semantic web, and we're bringing them into your desktop. We use the RDF. We have a defined ontology that you build upon. If you're an RDF enthusiast, you'll hear some of those buzzwords. So we have a system indexer that we use. We default to one called Strigi. And Nepomuk cooperates with Strigi to store its data and retrieve it, making it very quick to access your information. Now, RDF stores things in a graph. The graphs are hard to traverse and search. So we store that information in Strigi. Strigi can index it, tie it into our metadata, so your ID3 tags and your MP3s, who created that document if it's a Office word processing document, for instance. And it ties it all together, and then you can actually do these searches, and it pulls this information, and then you can start to traverse the graph from there. So I can see what other animal pictures John sent me recently. Because it's so new, we didn't have the chance to add it to a lot of our applications. But we're going to see it in a little bit when I start demoing the desktop software. We see one example of Nepomuk in action. And it's really cool because when we show them this application, people don't even realize that they're using search and tagging and RDF clouds. It's seamless and right within the application. For the software developers, how many people here have developed a multi-threaded application? How many people thought it was the easiest, most fun thing you'd ever done? Why'd all the hands go down? Oh, one person. Okay. So if you need a multi-threaded app, go see that guy. Apparently he likes it. Well, again, we looked at that and went, multi-threading is very important. Multi-core systems are increasingly common. This laptop I have here has got 2 cores in it. Remember thinking back in the day, wow, one day wouldn't it be neat if we had these machines you could pack around with you? They'd be small, light enough to, just take everywhere with you, and they'd have like more than one CPU. Woo. Here we have it, right? The future's caught up with us. But our software, again, hadn't really kept pace. One of the reasons is because writing multi-thread software is non-trivial, right? Just like the hardware issue, just like the multimedia issue. And it was impeding our ability to follow through on the performance and promise parts of our goals. So we took under our wing a project that already existed that was doing quite well called Threadweaver. It provides very easy access to the worker thread model. You essentially create objects you're going to put in the thread. You can schedule the threads. You can say, don't start this thread before you start that other thread. So you have dependencies. Makes it very simple and handles virtually all of the locking and whatnot for you. You can also set up a thread pool. So you can say, I want 4 threads. Now that's really cool when you hook it up to, again, something like Solid. So I can ask Solid, how many cores do I have? I've got 4. Great. Let's start up a whole bunch of threads. Right? So we can actually take advantage of the hardware that it's running on at the time it's running. Again, these frameworks are going to intersect in the coming years in ways we can only imagine. Qt Concurrent is and I put that up there on the slide. This is something that's coming with Qt 4 now, and it adds even more features for those of you who are doing multi-threading. One of the problems with multi-threading, of course, is that it's often specific to the platform you're writing it on. So running a multi-threaded app on Windows might be a bit different than running it on Linux, or writing it on Linux. These technologies, again, abstract away all the platform issues, so you don't have to worry about the differences. You get a very nice API that looks like all the other APIs you're used to when you're developing with KDE or Qt. So we've got all these frameworks, and that may sound like a lot of stuff we've done. What's really bizarre is that that's only a part of what we've done. That wasn't good enough for us. So back in that slide where I had all the boxes, we have the KDE platform. I mentioned that Qt overlaps it. I forgot to mention this when we were talking about Phonon. Phonon was a technology developed within the KDE project in the open, in the free software world. And Trolltech has adopted it as their multimedia platform as well in Qt 4.4 and beyond. So it shows how there's a symbiotic relationship between all the players in this ecosystem. They didn't have to recreate their own multimedia system and have yet another API that everyone had to learn and use. We're actually sharing this API, and Trolltech actually works on it directly within KDE's revision control repository, or SVN repository. I think this really shows the power of the model, where we get this great set of libraries in the form of Qt, all these paid developers to work on that, and Trolltech also gets software in return as well that happens to meet their needs. I think that with KDE 4 we've really shown how well free software projects that are working in the open can also cooperate with business interests. So the workspace. How's our frameworks? What are we going to do with it? Well, one of the things we noticed with other operating systems, and Linux as well, was people wanted to do really cool window management stuff. They wanted windows that wobbled or were transparent or translucent or did neat little effects when you hit them. And this has been available on Linux for a while now. Compiz Barrel, if you're familiar with that, of course on OS X, on Windows. We wanted to provide that, and so we put this support directly within our window manager. And I've got a little demo video here to show you some of the features and functionality in our compositing window manager that you get when you run the KDE Workspace.
wolności, co chciałbyś ją mieć. A twoje oczy ciągle w gotowości. Cały czas to przeszkadza ci mieć marzenia, które są, które już tutaj były. To nie sąd, który prawo ci da. Ja jestem z tych, którzy dadzą ci siły. Mówimy, każdy jest wolny i tak. Jak to policzman wyszukuje mnie. Przecież mam prawo nosić to, co chcę. To, co moje jest moje, co jara mnie. W razie co, nie wiem przecież jak i gdzie. Jak to policzman wyszukuje mnie. Przecież mam prawo nosić to, co chcę. To, co moje jest moje, co jara mnie. W razie co, nie wiem przecież jak i gdzie.
Woli chcemy być, my tak chcemy żyć. Gdy przychodzisz na ten świat, to nie masz nic. To twój szkic i ty go rysujesz. Człowiek, rozumiesz, ty losem swym kierujesz. Chcesz być wolny, czy chcesz być zakuty ślepą wiarą w nich? To są takie nuty, które niosą ukojenie wszystkim tym, co dosięgło ich zwątpienie i przygniotło brzemię. Uwierz swą wolność, to jest twoje mienie. To jest moje mienie wolnego człowieka. Prosto ze środka najszczerszy przekaz.
Jak to policzman wyszukuje mnie. Przecież mam prawo nosić to, co chcę. To, co moje jest moje, co jara mnie. W razie co, nie wiem przecież jak i gdzie. Jak to policzman wyszukuje mnie. Przecież mam prawo nosić to, co chcę. To, co moje jest moje, co jara mnie. W razie co, nie wiem przecież jak i gdzie. To jest pieśń, słowo i muzyka. I nawet jeżeli ty będziesz się bał też tej wolności, to masz ją w głośnikach. To jest to, co ukojenie ci da.
Something really cool that's happening right there is he's typing in, and as he types, it actually matches the window title. So you keyboard fanatics, some of these GUI effects actually do have a benefit for us too.
Holenderskie specyfiki wyczulają smak. Spod ciężkich powiek obserwuję świat, kupię czas. Tak często ci go brak, jeszcze raz. To co moje jest moje, co jara mnie. Coś mnie tu trzyma i sprawia, że żyć się chce. Muzyką stawiam most na drugi brzeg. Na wszystko lek, notabene wielki mały człowiek. Nadszedł nowy wiek, my w trzecie tysiąclecie zawęd. Prawdą jest napęd, nasz świat waszym światem. Dla ciebie wschodzi słońce, więc wolno zbijaj. Przez to się dowiesz, jak smakuje przyjaźń. Bądź sobą, sensową daje serce. Bo zaufałem temu, co gra skrzypce pierwsze. To dziś dzień, uniwersalne wersy od dwóch takich, co budowali mosty, a palili schematy.
Jak to policzman przeszukuje mnie. Przecież mam prawo nosić to, co chcę. To, co moje jest moje, co jara mnie.
So you may have noticed that some of those effects were more useful than others. But what's really interesting, we talked about accessibility, making our software available to all people. A lot of those features you saw in that video are absolutely critical to people with vision issues. You saw the free zoom, and actually it zooms in and you don't get these big pixel blocks. You actually get a zoom as if you're using an actual magnifying lens. This is very important for those individuals who deal with ocular issues. So it's not all just prettiness. So I'm going to take you on a brief tour here of some of our workspace applications. We have a new run dialog here that actually ties into the search and metadata. So you can type in a keyword, it will actually search through your system and pull things up. It also will do things such as has an embedded calculator, so you can do equals and some numbers. What's neat is it's plugin based, so we can actually extend it and add new types of matching runners. One of the ones that is being worked on right now is the ability to teach it new things. So you type in a word or a phrase it doesn't know, you select that action, and it'll actually go, so what do you actually want me to do next time you type that in? And you can actually teach your system how to respond. It's kind of like having a dog, right? So this is our new file manager. We shipped Conqueror for many years in KDE 3 and 2, and it works very well. It's an amazing power tool. Not everybody wants a power tool. They don't want a big file browser that does everything. I personally love Conqueror. I'm sure many people here in this audience do as well. But for a different audience of people who want just a file manager, a simple way to get around their file system and whatnot, we brought in Dolphin. Now, I love showing Dolphin because it demonstrates so many of the qualities of KDE 4. Number one, you can see a lot of the oxygen artwork that is new. We paid a lot of attention to usability. So we have a breadcrumb that we find that most people find easier to actually use to navigate around. And you can do things such as click on one of the buttons and go somewhere else. It really helps abstract away the concept of you're dealing with a file system. Of course, you can still click on it, get your traditional UI. We still have network transparency. See if I can connect to home here. And what's cool is when you go back to, yeah, there we are. This is my one of my servers back in Calgary. And when you actually go back to the breadcrumb, you can still pick your protocols and your host name. We've really tried to keep our focus and our emphasis on the powers of KDE while making it more accessible and approachable for people. Now, one of the things we loved is animation to provide hints. The human mind has come to be adapted to a world full of motion. And as you can imagine, it's pretty useful to be able to tell when something's coming at you with big, sharp teeth. There was a time when that happened to us a lot. And so our brains got very good at detecting motion. And over time, we've come to rely on motion cues to tell us when things are happening. We don't even think about it. It's just part of how our brain works. So we've spent a lot of time providing these kind of natural transitions and natural effects in KDE 4.0, and we're going to see more and more and more of them as time goes on. So if you notice, when I'm going to clear the bar here, and I want you to pay attention to the clear text button that's embedded right in here. As you notice, it doesn't just disappear and appear, it actually fades nicely in and out. Can you see that on the, yeah, you can, good. Some projectors don't have a refresh rate fast enough to see it. It's a very subtle effect, but the difference between something that just appears and disappears and something that fades in and out makes all the difference in the world. It also allows us to do things like get rid of configuration options. We love the configurability of our desktop because it allows us to use the software the way we want to. Right? That's part of the freedom of free software, is you get to decide how you want your software to work. The problem with that is it often results in these configuration dialogues that are full of 18,000 checkboxes. So in KDE 3, it would not be uncommon to see a sidebar like this, and then decide the way to deal with it, change the icons or whatnot, is to right-click on it, give them a little set of options they can click through. Great for power users, not so good for the average user. So instead we thought, well, why can't we just allow people to freely resize it, and the icons can adapt to that size? And if you notice, they don't just jump around, they actually animate up and down as well, giving a very nice effect. You'll see animations in our previews, in our thumbnails. Over here in our information bar, as I change between different size objects, which I need to find one. And they're all the same size for me today. Great. Oops. Oh, that's because I'm on a remote system. Let me go back to my home directory. There we go. And as you can see, it's not working for me today now. Great. The icons actually do animate between the different sizes. And on the sidebar, of course, you can drag and drop. We've paid a lot of attention to these kind of little issues. Now, over on this side, you'll see that I can rate a file. I can add a comment to it. I can tag it. Very familiar to anyone who's used Flickr, for instance. This is using Nepomuk. So anything I do in this little sidebar here to tag or rate or add notes to it gets stored in an application-neutral storage system, Strigi and Nepomuk, so that I can access that same information from any other Nepomuk-enabled application. This allows one to tag an MP3 in the file manager, and then when they're running Amarok, see those same tags and be able to build playlists, for instance, on them, or use those tags to send them onto your iPod. And that's what I meant by being embedded, right? We don't have a separate search app, per se. We do have an interface for it, but we're putting these features directly within our applications where people would expect to find them if you ask them, so where would you go and tag a file? Oh, the file manager. I'd open it up, go to the folder, and tag it. So that's where we put it. And Nepomuk gives us the ability to do this. What's also really cool is with Strigi, we worked with freedesktop.org to come up with something called ZSIM. We love strange names. ZSIM is a standardized querying system so that we can replace Strigi with Beagle or vice versa. If you're using Beagle, you can replace it with Strigi, and any ZSIM-enabled application can query that back end. So we're not building, hard coding support for specific engines. So that's our new file manager. We also have a new control panel called System Settings. We've done a lot of work on Conqueror. We have our help browser, of course, and then we have our new desktop shell, Plasma, which unifies the panels, the taskbars, with widgets on the desktop. It provides us with a resolution-independent default interface. What this allows us to do is take these same items and put them on even very small systems or larger systems, say on a TV, if we're going to make it part of a media center, or if we have our little handhelds. There's a fellow walking around with a EEE PC, a very cool little piece of hardware based on an Intel design that has KDE on it, and they're selling millions of them, literally. The problem with that is they had to design a UI for it that fit nicely in their small little screen they had. With Plasma, we're able to provide or do a lot of the work on the desktop and laptops where developers live, and then reuse vast amounts of that work for different form factor or devices with different form factors. The scripting, we also provide scripting support, so you can write applications or widgets in JavaScript. With 4.1, we'll be bringing in the Qt WebKit, which is the reporting of the HTML that became WebKit, used at Apple pervasively on the iPhone and Safari, bringing it back. With WebKit, we can actually display HTML, CSS in these little widgets right on the desktop. And with KDE 4.1, it gives us the ability to do things like load Apple dashboard widgets directly onto Plasma. And if you notice, we've actually freed everything up. So I've got a taskbar actually on my desktop. And if people are wondering what use is that, because I can't ever see my desktop, it sits in the background. Well, we give you the ability to bring your desktop in front of your windows, so that I can actually get to that taskbar, go back to my presentation, and it brings me right back to it. Where is it? It was here somewhere. I think I've hidden it. That's not good. There we are. So with Plasma, we get this ability to provide pervasive widgets written in scripting languages that are resolution independent. We can make them smaller or bigger, and it gives us the tools. Although we provided in 4.0 a traditional desktop with a taskbar and a start menu that you can search. Again, the search backends onto whatever search system you have installed. We provide the traditional system. Plasma is giving us the tools to be able to re-image how we actually provide the desktop. So here you see one very early start of that, which is Twitter on your desktop. I use it all the time now. I never really used Twitter before because I had to fire up a web browser. Well, now it's on my desktop. It's a Control F12 away. It pops in front of my windows. I type in it or see what Roofy's doing, for instance. This gives us a very easy way, a very short path between online services and the desktop, or your media center, or your handheld device. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. I talked about promise earlier. We weren't just thinking about 4.0. We were thinking about where can we go in 5 years, 10 years, maybe beyond that. So we're going to talk a bit about roadmap issues. Where are we going from here? Right? We've got all these frameworks. We've got this desktop this desktop shell that started up. Where are we going? I'd like to share with you what our roadmap is. At the end of January this month, we'll be tagging for release 4.0.1. We'll be releasing a minor release every month. We haven't forgotten about 3.5 because we have a lot of users with very large installations, and they don't change their installations very often, right? Every 5 years, 7 years, some of them. So in February, we are tagging for release 3.5.9. And that will come out with a new enterprise version of Contact. And then in July, we'll get 4.1.0. And then we'll start releasing 4.1.1 every month, 4.1.2, 4.1.3, etc. So we're moving back now to our release schedule, a little bit of release discipline. It was fun the last 2.5 years of being able to develop a feature-based release and go crazy and do all these interesting and innovative things. But now we've got the foundations laid, our pillars are in place, our applications are coming together, and now we're focusing on regular releases with noticeable improvement in polish and feature completeness as we go. But here's what I think is could be one of the real game changers. Traditionally, we have done very well on Linux and the BSDs because most of our developers run Linux or BSD. Solaris is an operating system that we are purposefully targeting with KDE 4. KDE 3 ran nicely on Solaris, but there wasn't a lot of integration. There wasn't a lot of support from the Solaris community itself. So we've actually started an Open Solaris project, a project within the Open Solaris community to actually manage the packaging and the Solaris-specific patches and improvements to KDE 4. Now, if that wasn't cool enough that we had, Solaris, the BSDs, and Linux, well, we came to a realization one day that for every one of us programming on the free operating systems, there were hundreds on Windows and Mac. And we were losing an opportunity here, bringing free software to all of these individuals and giving them the same kind of really great tools to create software that we had. And so, in one sense, Windows and Mac had for a long time been kind of a free software ghetto. You just didn't really have it because you didn't have access to all the stuff that we were developing on Linux and BSD. All of our frameworks, as you noticed, abstract away the platform-specific details, like Solid and Phonon. And so it happened that with KDE 4, we worked on ports to Windows and Mac OS. Now, this isn't just a Linux compatibility layer or something that we layer on top of it and it looks completely foreign. You have to run an X server on your Mac OS 10 desktop or anything like that. These are native applications. They run natively. So they build just like any other Mac application or any other Windows app. These are in technology preview right now. They work. They build. In fact, we're going to see in just a few moments here. Where's Ben? Come on up. We're going to do some quick tours and walkthroughs of the support on Windows and Mac, so you actually get to see firsthand. I have to swap this out. So we'll get to see firsthand what this looks like, and the goal is to deliver these in a production quality for 4.1. Now, as you may have imagined, porting to these new architectures was slightly more complex and different than, say, porting to Solaris. These are slightly different. These operating systems slightly different semantics and different backends that we had to support. So I'd like to introduce Benjamin Reed. He is our lead KDE Mac developer. He helps herd those cats. And he's going to take over and show us KDE on Macintosh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to start out by thanking the KDE developer community in general for embracing the new technologies in Qt 4 and the new build system and everything else that made things so much easier for us on other platforms. CMake has been a godsend. Qt 4 has really made things a lot easier, and the transition was much more amazing than I thought it would be. There were a lot of times where things just worked that I thought we'd have to spend a lot of time making work. So that was very cool. Right now, KDE on Mac actually, in most cases, is running pretty well. There's a lot of things that work right out of the box. You could go check out KDE CVS or Subversion right now and build and have a working application. There's a lot of stuff that went into that. There was a lot of development that the Windows folks worked on, that I worked on, that really made it possible. But in the end, a lot of the work happened in the community, and it was just it was an amazing thing to see how much things really worked out with the new APIs that just made it all happen. So I'm going to show a few apps here. This is Conqueror, our venerable browser, actually running on Mac OS. And it's working pretty well. I can go to a bookmark in theory. And it does have all the support, KIO support that everything else does, so you can do HTTP and HTTPS and fish and all those funny protocols that let you do wacky stuff. And it seems to be taking its time, of course, since it's a demo. Also, K-Stars, always good eye candy. K-Stars was not in any way written with the Mac in mind, as far as I'm aware, but it actually looks wonderful as a Mac app. It's one of the first things I always show off when I'm showing people KDE on the Mac. Also, an app that was originally developed with the Mac in mind. It has a standalone Qt version, is Marble. It's also integrated into the KDE build, and it looks wonderful as well. And if you look, everything looks like it should. All the menu bars end up on the Mac menu bar. These are native apps. They're not running under X11 or anything. I don't have the X server running. Oh, hey, my page says that it loaded. But it's really quite amazing to see how things have come together. And the goal is by KDE 4.1 to really have things well integrated, to have a real finished release. But if you want to try it right now, binaries are available. Everything that I'm showing is from a build that I did last week that you can download off of the website that is not loading in my demo. Ah, there it is. ranger.users.thinkproject.org/KDE. The binaries are universal binaries, so they run on PowerPC and Intel natively. They're huge because they are universal binaries. So the everything file, they're all available through torrent, so that it's not destroying anyone's web server. The everything installation package, which is all of KDE 4 plus KOffice, weighs in at about 1 gig. So, but that's it. Thank you.
So, as Ben pointed out, it was amazing to see how easy the software was to port over. And we really look forward to welcoming the KDE community, or the Mac community, into the KDE community, and vice versa, and seeing more people that are using the Mac OS and all of its wonderful features and whatnot can actually engage with our applications, use them, because we've got some pretty good stuff too. So I think synergy is great.
I actually had a pleasant surprise recently. I was in our IRC channel, which is KDE Darwin, if developers want to check it out. I was working on some stuff, and someone had said, "Oh yeah, I've been doing my KOffice development on Mac," and I didn't realize that that anyone had really been using it in earnest. I mostly I do builds and I try things out and I play with the guts, but I only occasionally use the apps in the real world as I'm still getting things working and all that kind of stuff. So it was really neat to see that there are people out in the community already able to use it and use it for development and just do their own thing with it. It's
reaching
really
out to
amazing.
the developers. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you.
So reaching out to developers was one of the things we really wanted to achieve. One of the other things we really wanted to achieve was to help the adoption and spread of open standards and open document formats. This is key and critical to maintaining freedoms around the world, actually. If we can't access our data, we can't access our information, if our government can't share information with its citizenry, if we lose our information into a digital black hole because in 10 years' time nothing can read that file format, we have issues, we have problems. Groupware is an interesting example of this problem in action. A lot of people use Microsoft Windows on the desktop, you may have noticed. What is the most common, pervasive, and perhaps even the best groupware application on the Windows platform up till now? Anybody? What's that? Office. Yeah, Office, which comes with Outlook. So Outlook gives people access to their calendaring and mail. It's interesting, Outlook only works really well with Exchange Server. You can support other servers, I've done it, using Outlook, but you start losing features, it's not so slick, you get, it just doesn't look right. Interestingly enough, Microsoft isn't overly eager to change that situation. And so, unfortunately, when you choose a Windows desktop, oftentimes people feel that their only real choice is to use an Exchange server on the back end. You lose the freedom to choose your technologies. You choose a technology over here, and it forces your hand over there. So what if we brought a groupware suite that would be familiar enough to people that were used to Outlook and whatnot, but it ran not just on Linux and Unix, not just on Windows, not just on Mac, but on all the platforms, that looked identical on all the platforms, worked identically to on all the platforms, and gave equal time to any groupware server that is supported. Well, suddenly, you can have a heterogeneous environment where you have Windows machines, Mac machines, Linux machines, Open Solaris machines, BSD machines, people using it on the desktop. Your support team only has to support one application. Those of you who have supported Outlook on Mac and Windows, for instance, you'll notice that they're not quite the same app. Contact is. So now you can harmonize your support staff on this one application. Same features, same bugs, right? Across all the platforms. Hopefully more features than bugs. But you also then get to choose which groupware suite you use on the server. And you may be surprised to find out, but Exchange does not use a lot of open protocols. A lot of it's fairly proprietary. For those who would like to actually be able to access their information using open protocols and open formats, you now have the option to pick your server and your desktop, and they're not tied together at the hip. I think this is one of the very exciting possibilities that we're opening up by bringing our software, both groupware software as well as Office software, which we support the ODF, the Open Document Format, as our native file format. We bring these applications to these other platforms. It opens up new possibilities. And with that, I'd like to introduce one of the Windows, the KDE Windows developers. Holger, I'm not going to say your last name because I'm going to mess it up. You can say it.
I am Holger Schröder.
There you go. I can't do the R thing. Holger is one of our KDE Win developers, and he's going to demo for us KDE on Windows.
Yes, I do. So, okay, so we start with K-stars.
This is a big place. It takes a while.
The interesting thing on this computer is right now I did not develop any things on this computer right now by myself. I just installed the packages which are downloadable from our servers. I will show the servers in the end. And, well, this is K-stars. I am not really used to using it, but it kind of works. We also have Marble. I'm a lot more used to the Earth. So you can zoom in, find Berlin. And of course, for Windows users, we need games. It's not on there anyway. Sorry? Yeah. So you can become MCSE with this thing. Well, we also have Conqueror basically running, and for all us KDE on Windows users, we are quite used to, well, using Google like this, and it works. So it feels a lot more familiar right now. Okay, something else to show. We do not yet have KOffice running. We are working on that. We do not yet have Conqueror running. We're working on that. But besides that, it's quite usable right now, and we try to aim at being really stable at KDE 4.1. Yeah, I want to show how to get to install KDE on Windows. You go to windows.kde.org. There you find a link to download our installer. It's some megabytes, so I didn't download it right now. It looks like this. The interesting thing about this installer, it's a Qt binary which you install on computers once, and then it downloads a description of how to install which programs over the internet. So we are not distributing some kind of packaged self-extracting exe files once and then we leave the user alone. With this, we enable the opportunity to update things they installed once, and also when we have, for example, KOffice running in, I don't know, some months, the additional applications which will be available then will show up in this installation program. So for example, if we want to install KDE somewhere, we simply mark the things we want to have, then say download, and it shows additional dependencies, and then it starts downloading. So it's basically usable for normal end users, and well, that's about it.
So what I think is remarkable is, again, you saw K-Stars, Marble, Conqueror on all these platforms, and there's not a lick of platform-specific code in any of those applications. Right? This all happens in the framework layers. So as application developers, you can write one code base, you can develop it on Windows, if you wish, and you're not locking yourself out of the growing Linux community or the growing Mac OS community. Or vice versa. If you prefer to develop on a free operating system, free software operating system like Linux or BSD Open Solaris, you're not giving up the Windows community. Or if you want to develop on Mac, you're not giving up the Linux community or the Windows. So we're bringing all these communities together of users, which really opens up the door. And it's been fascinating to actually watch it unfold and happen, and really how easily it's come together.
It's so amazing. We are only about like 5 to 10 people working on the Windows stuff in part-time, and we kind of made it till now. So I'm quite amazed about that.
And when he talks about being amazed at it, realize that they haven't done KOffice yet, but they've done the rest of KDE. That's like 4 million and change lines of code. We're not talking about porting, a 10,000 or 100,000 line application. We're talking libraries, whole suites of applications. It's really rather impressive. So when 4.1 comes out, as I mentioned, July, that is our goal, to actually produce production-ready releases. But don't let that scare you off, because in Technology Preview, as you saw, they already work rather well. Oh, and don't worry, you don't actually have to run the KDE apps from the command line in Windows. You can always spot the ex-Linux geek when he pops up the console and starts using it, right? But you can actually, put the icon on your desktop, or it appears in the Start menu, and you can launch it directly like you would any other Windows app. I think what is also really interesting is that the widgets, as you saw, they didn't stand out as, oh, that's a Linux app, right? Or that's a Windows app on Linux. So there's been some porting efforts, quote unquote, for some applications to Linux, for instance, and it looks like a Windows app that's running on a Linux machine. And this again destroys that barrier. So we're really opening up the accessibility of technology to more and more people. So here's K-Stars again on Linux, just so you can, now you've seen on the other two platforms, and we saw it quite a while ago. It's the exact same application. KPAT. Now KPAT's quite interesting. I mean, everyone needs Solitaire, right? You have to have that, otherwise you can't be installed in an office, apparently. Now, as you notice, there's these really nice smooth animations, things switching and turning. And what's neat is if I change the size of the the game, it actually re-renders, and you don't get pixely bitmaps and whatnot. How do we achieve this? Well, part of the beauty thing, again, was we've pervasively used SVG, which is an open standard format for vector graphics. SVG actually has a lot of capabilities, some of which you're seeing here. All of our games have been retooled to use SVG so that they can be themed easily and resized to any size. What's really neat is you can now play KPAT on devices that have really tiny screens. If I can, there you go. I can't see it anymore, but it's there, and it is, of course, actually playable. And if I was on a phone, that might make more sense. So we're taking these concepts across the board with our applications. Trolltech recently released a Windows CE port of their library, and it's amazing when you take these desktop-style applications to these different devices, how well the UI adapts if it's written with resolution independence in mind, if it's written to actually have a humane interface on it instead of a highly instrumented with 18 million toolbars everywhere. And of course, here we have Marble as well. Marble is really interesting because it's a component. It is an application, but with one line of code, you too in your application can have a spinning 3D world. It doesn't rely on OpenGL, which is really impressive in my mind. A lot of math going on in the background. And of course, you can provide different overlays. This might not be the place to be talking about street level mapping, but all the Google people, turn off your ears. No, there's work started underway with Marble. It is freely zoomable, as you saw on the other platforms. It also works on Linux, of course. If you zoom in right now, you'll notice we don't have street data. We're working with a project, or starting to work with a project called OpenStreetMap, which is all about freeing up map resource information. It's interesting. Maps are highly proprietary. Usually that's fine and okay. I love Google Earth, which is actually written with Qt, by the way, which is why it's so easily portable across the platforms. I use maps.google.com all the time. That's great. Those are great tools, but I can't actually interact with that data in a way that gives me the freedom that I'm used to in dealing with this sort of data. So instead of trying to free up someone else's data, what the OpenStreetMap people did, bizarrely, crazy, most of these ideas start with crazy thoughts and ideas, right? Was they said, well, why don't we just get people to go walk around the world with GPS devices? We'll record where they go, and then we'll upload all the GPS trails into a server. Then we'll have other people that will go on, download the GPS trails, and then mark them up so that they can label what the streets are. And then we'll have street maps. You got to wonder how many beers they were having that night. But great things start with great optimism. Great things start with audacious vision. And so, we will have, eventually, street maps where the data is open, where the application that you access it is also open, and you'll be able to zoom in and see your street-level mapping. Marble itself already does tile-based rendering. You won't see it in 4.0 because it's well hidden inside the guts of the code, but we can actually deliver tiles over the network from a server and do the tiled rendering that we all have come to know and love in proprietary mapping applications. There'll still be room for proprietary applications, of course, because they'll have features and functionality that we probably just won't provide. But this is focusing on people that really should have access to this information. And just like with ODF, which is it's the open document format, which is the ISO standard format for word processing, spreadsheet, and documents presentation software, it's being adopted by more and more countries. ODF is. You'll find it. Countries in Europe have started to give it the rubber stamp approval so that all their files must be stored in ODF format. Places in Africa. I hope to see more of it happen in North America. It started. It was tried out in the great state of Massachusetts and didn't quite get through. We saw some pushback on that. But just as with ODF, the adoption is growing. The OpenStreetMaps, we've had situations, I believe it was the Netherlands, that donated. The government had paid for street-level maps for the entire country. And when they found out about OpenStreetMap, they said, yeah, that's a great idea, and donated the entire set of data. Another country that did vast portions of India has also donated their data. The United States, they're right now in the process of importing U.S. government collated information, street-level information, because of course you need it for Census Bureau, right? You need to know what streets to send your people to go ask for a census. That information is right now, as we speak, being crunched on the servers. It's a fairly big data set, so it's taking them months to actually rip through it, but at that point we'll have street-level maps for the United States. And it was funny, when I first heard about this project, I thought, I'm from Calgary, Canada, so I thought, I wonder if they have, they won't have street maps, and my entire city's done. It was amazing. This little guy here is just kind of a closing feature I really love. It's like any other desktop widget that we support. You can rotate it freely. Put the kitty upside down if you want. You can resize it and re-renders. It's an SVG. What you're looking at here is 4 lines of JavaScript. Provide a little package, a little JavaScript file. I dragged it from my Add Widgets dialog onto my desktop, and without the application really knowing what was going on, it was suddenly running a little bit of JavaScript on my desktop. Just like with Cross, we have the ability to provide multiple languages, and we will eventually be providing support for Python, Ruby, and well, whatever else anybody feels the urge to supply. So I hope that I've been successful in kind of giving you a taste of where we are right now with KDE 4, with the 4.0 release, and more importantly, where we're going. I mentioned earlier that we've got years ahead of us of releases, and we do. This platform has been designed and built to last well into the next decade. We'll see just how far we can take it and how many cool things we can do. But I think we've built a foundation that will survive and will allow us to do things that just haven't been seen in computing before, at least on desktop computing. Taking things out of the research labs, such as Nepomuk, and bring it onto production desktop systems. And this is interesting, because it wasn't so many years ago that we were chasing taillights. Right now, in that jostle on the freeway, we've actually overtaken and we're passing our competition when it comes to technology. I'm really excited about this, and more than anything else, I'm very proud to be part of a community that is as vibrant, literally 1,000 strong, as I said at the beginning, as vibrant, as welcoming, as open, and as unbelievably talented and intelligent as the KDE people.